It's not fair to compare the Pixel 9 to Apple because Google does not have a habit of ripping features or looks or design from Apple in the first place. All right, good morning, everybody. So this is a video that I should have made last night if I was responsible, but I am not responsible and I was eating spaghetti. So I was busy. But I'm seeing a lot of just crazy ass opinions about the Pixel 9 and the 9 Pro. Which don't make sense when you actually break down what people are saying. And I want to talk about this because, again, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. So I've heard a lot of things like, oh, no, Google's going to copy Apple now. Google's going the Apple route and they make the Pros all the same. And they make, flat edges. Oh no, the lines where the antennas are look exactly the same as Apple. Oh, the eGads. None of this is logical. I concede that there's a lot of sharing within the industry. So a lot of, if Samsung does something cool, then, Google probably will copy it, such as Nearby Share becoming like Quick Share or whatever the new version is. If Google does something great, like camera technology, the rest of the industry is now computational photography, where really that was not the case before the Pixel 1. It was the case in like small ways, but not nearly to the extent that it is now. With photo editing, video editing, shooting photos, all that stuff is drastically different since the Pixel 1. That was Google's doing. Look at the stuff that it's Galaxy AI now. Ooh, like everything's AI. You know where that comes from? Google. Circle to search. It's Google stuff. It's the Google brain in a Galaxy phone. So like, in general, things get shared across the industry. I want to establish that. I'm not saying that none of these are similarities. I'm saying that the similarities that are being compared to iPhone are not what people think it is. So I just saw somebody on Twitter say the Pixel 9 and the 9 Pro are going the way of iPhone, essentially, because they are making both the phones exactly the same, as far as the same triple camera setup, the same whatever. They're like, oh, we're just the iPhoneification of everything. The Pros are all the same now, just like the Pro and Pro Max. Every single Pixel since the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, technically with the 5A, because that was the COVID year and that was really supposed to be what it was, but whatever. All those phones, 5 phones, were exactly the same across the board. 2, 2XL, 3, 3XL, 4, 4XL, exactly the same camera system. 5, 5A, as far as I remember, same camera system. No, that's a little bit different because it is technically the 5A, but that's not the point of this video. The 6 is the one that separated itself from that. That's the first logical fallacy of this complaint that I saw. The second part of this is when people see Pixel X Pro, if they see Pixel 8 Pro, they compare it with the iPhone 15 Pro Max or the Galaxy S23 Ultra. And then they complain, or they say like, oh, they're copying, but like that's not a fair comparison because Samsung has the regular, the Plus, and the Ultra, right? Has 3. iPhone essentially has the same, even though we're in a different naming scheme. They have the regular with the larger screen size model, the Plus, the Pro, and the Pro Max. The Pro and Pro Max are essentially the same thing. So whichever way you line it up, essentially Galaxy and iPhone have the same models, they just have a different naming scheme. Google doesn't do that. They have the A series, which is kind of the best for the average person, which would be the equivalent of the regular S23 or the iPhone 15. Whether or not the specs and all that stuff, I'm not talking about that now. But for a point of entry, Pixel 7a, soon to be 8a, iPhone 15, Galaxy S23 is really the entry point to the flagship devices. You don't get all the features, but it's a snippet of what you could if you wanted to upgrade. Galaxy S23 Plus, or 24, whichever model we're at, and the iPhone 15 Plus or Pro, depending, how you look at it. The Pro is the same price, so that's what I'm comparing right now. The Plus and the Pro is kind of where it differs a little bit because it's the same price point, but Galaxy I don't think differentiates between the regular and the Plus cameras, whereas Apple does. Google doesn't even have a Plus model, but it's the same price as the Plus. So really, in all fairness, we should be comparing the iPhone 15 Pro, the Galaxy S24 Plus, and the Pixel 8 Pro, because that's all the same lineup. That's the same price point. The only ones outside of that are the iPhone 15 Pro Max and the Galaxy S24 Ultra. Google does not have one of those. I've seen a lot of these kind of like arguments against Pixel. Like Pixel looks like an iPhone now because it has flat edges. Like Apple used flat edges a long time ago for about 5 years, and then they got away from it, and then they went back to it because everyone liked it. Flat edges are cool. Yeah, it was inspired by Apple a few years ago, but this is not something where like Galaxy, every single year there are 3 or 4 points that are just direct rips of iOS or an iPhone thing. Even if it's as small as like the frosted glass look of like the pull down the control menu. Just little stuff like that. Like they take a lot of cues from Apple, the same way like Color OS does, or Huawei does, you know, some of the Chinese Android companies that want to mimic iOS. Google does not have a reputation of doing that. So there's nothing that I can think of besides maybe like when Apple went from like the 2 camera setup, like the vertical, to the flat 3, you know, the 2 or 3, the square camera version, and so did Pixel 4. It was done in a completely different way, but we didn't know it at the time. We assumed that it would be flat on the iPhone before seeing it, and then Google announced the Pixel 4 in like June. We saw it early, and then Apple did theirs completely differently with rims on all of them and each lens individual and all that stuff that we now know. So besides that, can you name me one thing that Google has stolen from Apple? That's not like, well, they have, you know, AirDrop and we have nearby share. Like that's just a feature. That's not like a rip from Apple. Like we want to be Apple, like the big Spider-Man and the little Spider-Man. Like we want to be Apple. It's not like that. If you name me anything, Google does not have a habit of doing this. Yes, there are similarities in industry, like flat screen, which is great. Flat edges, which is great. I love both of those things. Colors are shared because they're all boring ass dark gray, light gray, white colors. What else do you expect? Like that's not a specific sharing from one device to another feature. That's just a general what's available in the industry kind of feature. So all that to say, I'm really tired of hearing that Pixel 9 is a direct iPhone ripoff, because it's not. The only feature that's at all similar to the iPhone is flat edges and a dark gray back. That's it. The rest, there's no dynamic island, there's no titanium, there's no like none of that. There aren't individual camera lenses. There's nothing else. There's nothing else. It's just that. And I see so many people just bitching on Twitter about this that I just wanted to make this video and tell you my opinions on it and possibly clear some of this up. I don't, hopefully, probably not, I don't know. But it's not fair to compare the Pixel 9 to Apple because Google does not have a habit of ripping features or looks or design from Apple in the first place. It's more of an evolution of the 6, 7, 8, and then 9. Look at the edge, go look at those 4 phones and then come back and tell me that's not a general evolution of the actual Pixel itself. It is not ripped from Apple.